Well, man, what's up, guys? We are wrapping up our series, What If, tonight, and we're going to be answering the question. What if my friends determine my future? And then what if the church is God's cure for loneliness? And we're going to be in Ecclesiastes chapter 4. The book of Ecclesiastes, if you have a Bible, I invite you to grab it. It's in the Old Testament. Go to the book of Ecclesiastes, and we're going to be in a few verses in chapter 4, verse 7 through 12. And as we begin, so who here, question for all of us, by raise of hands, who here you hate group projects? Raise of hands. So I would say the majority of the room raised their hands. So there's a lot of reasons that we hate group projects. I can pretty much tell you I am the reason. I am the reason, to quote theologian T. Swift, it's me, hi, I'm the problem, it's me. And so I remember taking my sciences and the maths and all that stuff, and sciences in particular, Chem 1, I remember being in that, and I was like, man, I do not like this class. So I like biology, but this class and I just was not connecting at all. You could say we just didn't have chemistry. And so luckily for me in college, my at that time, my girlfriend's roommate, who is now my wife, she became friends with me, and it just so turned out that she was in the class that I was in, and so there's a lot of labs and a lot of group assignments that we would have to do. And as we were in these labs and group assignments, the teacher would give us our stuff, and we'd have these 2 hours. And then at some point, Elizabeth is her name. Elizabeth would say, hey, do you want to take this question? And there's 3 or 4 of us, and I'm looking at her and them, and I'm just like, well, I would. That's a good idea. But here's the thing. You got a rhythm going right now, I don't want to mess you up. How about I cheer you on? And that was kind of the card that I always played. And she looked at me, and because we were kind of friends, she was looking at me and be like, okay. And she is the reason, because I was partnered up with her, she's the reason why I got to graduate. She's the reason why I got a B in chemistry, and I just want to say out loud, thank you, Elizabeth, for that. But where does that go? How does that set us up for where we're going tonight? Well, kind of like answering this question, what if your friends actually determine your future? Who I was linked up with was able to get me to the future that I knew I needed to get to and the destination that I wanted. And in life, and what we're going to go through, the right friends will definitely have an influence on the right future for you, or the wrong friends will lead you to the wrong destination. But your friends are going to have an influence over your life. And so what this passage is going to teach us is that we are going to see the importance of community, and we're going to see the benefit of how the right community leads to a lot of positive things in our lives. And so we're going to see this in a few verses in Ecclesiastes chapter 4. Starting in verse 7, let's read it together. It says, again, I saw vanity under the sun, one person who has no other, either son or brother. Yet there is no end to all his toil, and his eyes are never satisfied with riches. So that he never asks, for whom am I toiling and depriving myself of pleasure? This also is vanity and an unhappy business. 2 are better than 1, because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow, but woe to him who is alone when he falls and has not another to lift him up. Again, if 2 lie together, they keep warm, but how can one keep warm alone? And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, 2 will withstand him. A 3-fold cord is not easily broken. Several key truths for us as we talk about the value of who we surround ourselves with in our life. It's going to set up the problem to begin with, and the first point is this: when you are lonely, you feel empty. And where do we see this? Well, it says, I saw this vanity in life under the sun, and vanity literally means to be empty. So there's this emptiness, and then it says one person who has no other. There is emptiness to loneliness. And I know that this is a massive issue going on in our culture today. It's obviously been one for a very long time, as he's writing about it even here. But today in our culture, for young adults, only 33%, this is startling to me, man, only 33% of young adults feel cared for and connected with people that are around them. Only 33. That means that most do, they do not. And many people that I've talked with, as I've met with one-on-one meetings with people, I've found that, man, loneliness is a serious problem that a lot of people have. And we've all felt that sting or that ache, that low hum of loneliness, probably in our own way in the room. I remember one example is whenever I graduated and my parents, they left, and after the graduation day and about 9 o'clock, they went to their hotel, and a lot of my friends were having parties and stuff, guys from my fraternity and stuff like that. And I remember for whatever reason, I just did not get the invite that night. And I was just sitting there going, man, this stings. And there's a lot of us that have experienced being surrounded by a lot of people, but yet being known by none of them, right? Like this is what's going on. We're the most connected generation to ever live by far because of technology, but also the most disconnected generation to ever live. And he's setting up this problem because in Scripture, what we see is we are created, and what we experience just in life is we are created for connection, but right now we are living in a culture that creates isolation. And there's a lot of ways that this happens, from just the individualism that our society pushes to the independent kind of culture that we are in, the self-made thing, like I don't need anybody else. And then there's just the busyness of life that we're on the hamster wheel going and going and going. And then some of us, man, we've been hurt before, or we are nervous about opening up, so we hide who we actually are. And Matt Chandler said it like this: to be 99% known is actually to be unknown, to be unwilling to show who you really are to someone. And we want to be fully known and fully loved. That's the desire that we all have. And you find that in Jesus, by the way, but we're supposed to have that with not only Jesus, but with each other as well. And God himself, before sin ever entered the world, he said that there's something that is not good. So when everything was in total perfection, he said there's one thing that was not good, and it's in Genesis chapter 2, verse 18. He says, it is not good for man to be alone. Meaning he created us not only for connection with him, but for connection with each other. And so God, he hardwired us for connection. And man, we see this actually from birth. So whenever I was in the hospital room, after our 10-month-old was born, Ivy, I took this picture, and it talks about the benefits of skin-to-skin contact whenever you have a newborn. So it says, according to research, full-term babies who are kept skin-to-skin with their mothers are more likely to latch on easily and breastfeed well. Bet you didn't know you were going to learn that in church tonight. Have better digestion, cry up to 10 times less, stay warmer than if wrapped in blankets, and have better blood sugars, and have less pain when painful procedures are being done. And then it talks about preterm babies, and it says they will have fewer blood pressure, heart rate, and breathing problems. They will have better oxygen levels and more stable body temperatures, lower levels of stress, less reaction to painful procedures, and even earlier discharge from the hospital. How crazy is that? That you actually will get healthier quicker because you have that person, that human connection of actual skin-to-skin contact with somebody. Man, we are actually literally hardwired for connection to other people. Now again, like this is all to set up like that this is the problem, that we're created for this, but we're lacking it at the same time. And this passage, it actually brings up finances, and he's talking about this guy and toiling and working for money, but he's not bringing up finances to try to talk about just making money. He's talking about relational poverty. As Solomon's writing here, he's pointing out the problem of relational poverty that he sees around him. Mother Teresa, when she was alive, she lived, a well-known person for all the loving acts that she did to show care for people. She lived a lot of her life in Calcutta, India, and she would care for the poorest of the poor in the world, and those who were diseased, those who had leprosy, and all kinds of other massive issues going on where they were outcast from society. She spent her time with those people, and in that kind of an environment, she said, here's the worst thing. Here's the greatest poverty I've seen. She said this: loneliness and the feeling of being uncared for and unwanted are the greatest poverty. And I would add the only poverty greater than that is the poverty of not knowing Jesus, because we're created to know Christ. So again, just asking the question as we're about to dive in, what if the church is actually the cure for the loneliness epidemic that we see going on in our world? I believe we're going to see some ways that it really is. And if you are here and you go, man, I feel like I'm disconnected. I feel like though I'm surrounded by people, I'm unknown by very many of them. I want to tell you that, man, like, you have a place where you can call home here, that you have people that are around you that really want to know you and be known by you here and have a real faith family here. And we're offering that in some specific ways on a weekly basis. But we all long for connection. We're created for connection, but we need connection with the right people, right? Like who you were connected with, who you were linked up with, it can lead to the pass or the fail in life, right? Kind of like I had to be linked up with the right person to help me out. You need to make sure the people you are with are going the right direction. You need the correct community. And you can write this down. Here's the next point. We need connection with people going the right direction in life. And where do we see this? Look at verse 9. It says, two are better than one because they have a good reward for their toil. It's this picture of two people working alongside of each other, going after the same goal. That's what we want. We want to be going the same direction in life as people that are around us. So let me ask the question for all of us is, am I connected to the right people? Are you and I, are we connected to the right people? Man, when Jesus radically changed my heart, it took about 6-7 months for me to actually backpedal out of the party lifestyle. And I just had this realization. I was like, man, God's not trying to keep me from pleasure. God's actually, I believed the lie that pleasure was found outside of Jesus, and kind of following Jesus just meant that you're going to be really, really bored in your life. And so I kind of went to what the world would say is pleasure, at least what the college life would say is pleasure. And man, I dove into all those things, and then I realized I had been lied to, and I realized that Jesus is the joy I was searching for. Jesus is the fulfillment that I was seeking, and Jesus is the one that actually was just the fulfillment in my life, and I was experiencing God in such a profound way. And I started to kind of realize, man, I don't want to do the things that I used to do. I want to go after God. I don't want anything to be an obstacle between me and God. And I had a couple of realizations as I quit kind of some of the normal things like getting drunk and getting high and all that stuff. I had a couple realizations. One, not for all of them, but for most of the people that I was with, I realized pretty quickly, you remove getting drunk, we had very little that we were connected about. We had very little connection outside of that. It didn't go deeper than that. And I remember thinking okay, so you take away the alcohol and there's what else is here. And there's some people that I was still very much so connected with, but most people, that was it. And maybe you've had that experience in your life. You're like, man, we're all together, but we just get together to go get drunk or high or go to the next party. Are we really known by each other? Are we really in each other's corner? And I realized for me in that moment, for a lot of people, the answer was no. I guess you could say it this way: if you take away the alcohol and the marijuana and the pills, there was no substance, you could say, to the relationship. You get it? Because those things you get. Okay. I don't want to dive into the weeds with the puns, but that was a pretty good one. I know whenever I say them, I can feel your booze on the inside. Get it? Because booze is another word for alcohol. It's clever. Okay. But I had the realization that there wasn't really a deep connection. And then the second thing that I realized that, man, as I was saying, man, I don't want it to be in that lifestyle anymore. that there were several people that, man, they were almost frustrated that I wasn't getting drunk anymore. And they were encouraging me, come on, man, just come and let's just go out one more time. And they were encouraging me to go against this newfound faith that I had. And I had this realization. I want someone in here needs to hear this. Someone who encourages you to sin and to go against your faith is not being a good friend in that moment. And I know that is a very simple sentence, but it's so true. It's not what we want or need in our life. Now, don't get me wrong. I wasn't upset at them. Because really, they were searching for the things that I had just been searching for. Like had these same longings that I had just had and was trying to find them in the same places that I was just trying to find them. And so I was the opposite of mad at them. I wanted to reach them and them to see the light of Jesus for their life. And if you are the friend, maybe you're here and you're like, man, my friend got baptized a couple weeks ago. Or your friend said, hey, why don't you just come and get a good meal and see what you think? And you've been kind of interested, but you're on the fringe. And you're kind of thinking, I don't know, the Christian lifestyle thing, like I find it weird and you just haven't dove in, but you sense that there's something pulling at you. And there might be something here. And I would say that something is a someone, and that's God speaking to you. God is trying to speak to you if you're that friend that, man, he is the forgiveness you long for. He is the redemption that you are seeking. He is the salvation that actually will set you free. And ultimately, Jesus is the place where you will find the fulfillment that you were made to have. You're made for him. And this is how it happened with my friends. And this is how I know that this is true, that people have a longing and they're trying to fill that longing with so many other things. Is my friends, as I started this Bible study, had no idea how I'm supposed to share a message. It was just like 10 minutes of me just reading the Bible and just being like, this is good stuff. And I didn't know what else to say. And they started to go to this Bible study because they had seen one thing, and that was God changed my life. And they started to go, and many of them attend regularly. One of them actually ended up in my wedding. So it's not like I just completely abandoned ship with these people. I still cared and loved them very, very much. But what I am trying to say is I had to create a healthy distance from that lifestyle pattern that I was once stuck in, so that way I could step into what God had that was better for me. And that meant partly that I needed to surround myself with other friends that were seeking God. Like we need people that are seeking God in our lives. But all of us, do you have godly friends in your life? Right here, right now where you're sitting, do you have God-seeking friends in your life? Where their pursuit is genuine. I've said this many times, like we want, like you come here and you hear the worship and hopefully it's a benefit that you get from hearing God's word preached on a week in, week out basis. And we want to experience, man, having a passionate life lived for Jesus. But passionate, it's not to be on fire for God. It's not you coming here and the band hits that and they hit that note and they're like, he won't. And you're like, ooh, that was good. And you're like, man, I'm feeling it. No, it's that you would live a life that honors God outside of these doors, that you would seek Jesus outside of these doors, and your passion would not just be in here for an hour, but it would be out there in the rest of your life. We want that kind of a passion. If you want to burn for the Lord, that's what I mean. If you want to be on fire for God, here's what I've said to several people. If you want to be on fire, get next to someone who is burning. If you want to be on fire, then you got to be around someone else who's burning. And I will add this, trying to burn alone, you burn out. So if you don't want to burn out, man, don't burn alone. Like God created us to do this thing together. And to the person who would say, like, and I've had conversations with a lot of people and they'll say, I'm really the only person in my friend group that's really desiring God much at all. And when I hear that statement, I know God's desire for that person is that wouldn't be true for much longer. That you would surround yourself with people that are also seeking God so you can fan the flame of your faith. You need people that are going to point you to Jesus. Do you have them? Now, this is what the church is supposed to be. Ironically, it's a place where people have struggled to find community historically in our culture. But man, here, I believe that this is what we were aiming after. And when you have the right community, you have the right people going the right direction in their life, it leads to so many benefits. But this passage, it lists a few. The first one is this: a godly friend. What happens when you have godly friends in your life? A friend will take you further and make you stronger. A friend will take you further and make you stronger. Verse 9, it says, two are better than one. And then at the end of this passage in verse 12, it says, a threefold cord is not quickly broken. I have battle ropes that I work out with in my garage. And I have seen just one of those fibers, if you just took one of them out, you could break it. But I have seen 30 people, like grown college men, playing tug of war with this battle rope. And I've never, ever once been like, don't break it, because I know how strong it is. Because the fibers all together make it so strong. And this is the picture that God is giving us. When we all come together, there is a strength that is found in the numbers of community that you surround yourself with. A friend will take you further and make you stronger. I can't remember how I found this video, but I might have just been scrolling. I don't know. But I came across this video of a bunch of Amish people. And so Amish people, I learned this because I looked it up after I looked at the video. Amish people, what they do is they will all get together as a community and they will build the barn, right? So they will literally build a house or a barn, thousands and thousands upon thousands of pounds. And then they will literally move that barn walking together. Here's a picture of it. That is 300 grown men moving a barn right there. See our little Amish guy with his little top hat on, it's cute. But you see, they're moving, and they're all moving together. They're all moving in unison together towards a destination. Like, imagine your friend talking to you, and they're just like, hey, you're like, hey, what you doing this weekend? They're like, oh, I'm moving. Oh, you're moving? Wait, I'm moving a house. Oh, you're moving from one house to another? No, I'm moving the house. I'm moving the entire thing. So these guys, they pick up, 300 of them pick up an entire barn. Just so you can get a picture of the strength in numbers, an untrained male that does not lift weights can usually deadlift about 155 pounds, which is not tons of weight. But 300 of these guys, let's say that they just can all lift 155 pounds, and that's what they're doing. That would equal 46,500 pounds that they're just walking along the prairie, yippee-doo-dah day, together. It's crazy. The point is that, man, together we are stronger and we go further. Here at The Way, something that we train up our leaders with and that we hold as a value, we have an acrostic that spells the word win, W-I-N. And the N in that is this: no one sits alone. No one sits alone. And this is something that we try to make sure that, man, here people are not dropped through the cracks. Here people are talked to, and we care about people really, really well. But this is more than just that. It's not like a literal thing, but it's also just a value that we have here. This is why we have CGs. This is why people with leader t-shirts on talk with people because, man, they're volunteering their time to say, hey, like, I just want to make good friends. I just want to be that good friend to somebody else. Because I wish someone would have done that for me, and I want to offer that to other people. Or I want to see someone that's just like me when I was a sophomore, freshman, junior, whatever, coming in. And I knew what I needed, and I want to offer that to somebody. That's what our leaders are trying to do. When someone fills out a Connect card here, we offer to meet with them. Every single person that fills one out, you don't have to. It's not an awkward thing if you don't want to. But we say, hey, would you like to sit down? We want to get to know you. Just this week, our staff, just the college staff, met with 87 people across tables with just one-on-one meetings. Getting to know people, knowing their story, praying over them, talking with them. Sometimes it's just get to know you. Sometimes it's, man, I'm dealing with something really tough, and I need someone to be there for me right now. And maybe you're here and you're hearing all this, and you're going, okay, but here's the thing. I feel like the church is the reason why I feel lonely. maybe you're here and you're hearing this and you actually have a lot of church hurt in your life. You have a lot of distrust for people within the church, or you've been hurt by the church in your life. And you feel like maybe even the phrase would resonate with you that like, I feel like the world has actually accepted me, but the church I feel like has rejected me in some ways, or someone that you know or your family member. And if that's you, first I want to say, man, I get it. Like I've experienced rejection by the church. Whenever I was 19 years old, there was a lot of lies going around me. The 200-person church that I was involved in, so things kind of went around this community pretty quick, and there were lies being spread about me and my at that point my girlfriend, and I was a sheep and a wolf in sheep's clothing was being said about me. All kinds of slander was being said about me. So it got so bad that the pastor of the church actually called a gathering with these grown adults to say, hey, would y'all quit saying these things about Travis? And at that point, man, him having to do that, I was like, I don't even want to be here. Like, I wanted to go back. I wanted to go back, man. At least I'd go back to Kyle's house and we could all get drunk together and go party together. But man, at least they weren't spreading a bunch of crap about me. And I experienced that moment. I had to make a decision. One, if you've kind of been in that place, I would say here's kind of the battle that I had as I was praying to God. One, I realized that Jesus is still good, and not everybody that is in the church is actually a Christian. Not everybody that's in the church is a good representation of Christ. And then as I prayed, man, I realized that if I was to go back, where would I go? I would go back to what I knew didn't work. And so I chose to stay, and that pastor, he reached out to me, and Brother Larry Venable is his name, and he's the first pastor that mentored me, poured into me, showed me what it is to read God's word, showed me how to read God's word and how to minister to people, and I learned so much from that man. And then because of him, man, I was stronger, and he took me way further than I ever would have went by myself. And so I'm thankful that I stayed. Now, how does this apply to you? What I want to tell you is that, man, we are an imperfect people in the church, but we have a perfect Jesus. And all of us are going after him together. And man, we're not perfect, but staying and connecting is worth it. And when I believe, just like me, you'll see that it is actually worth it. And together we go further and we're stronger. And he's going to continue talking about the benefits of godly friendship in your life. You look at verse 10. It says, for if they fall, one will lift up his fellow, but woe to him who is alone when he falls and has not another to lift him up. This week, just this week, man, crossed paths with several people. And here's the point that he just described. A friend's going to help you when you fall. And one guy I talked with this week, having all kinds of struggles, having all kinds of tests run, was unsure what's going on. And I just gave him the word of encouragement that helped me have a handle to hold on to as life was in a storm. And it's something that I've shared to many other people, but it's this: God didn't take you this far to leave you now. And as I prayed about him and as I've checked on him, I believe it's true. And maybe you're here and you're going through a battle right now and your family's going through a battle or something's going on. I just want to say to you, I want to be that friend. Even right here from the stage, I want to tell you, man, like truly, I've experienced in my life, God, he didn't take you this far to leave you now. Another person I talked with, someone that's really close to me, my stepdad, Glenn, going through cancer. And as I was talking with him, and I was saying, how can I encourage you? His response to me was, you're doing it now. And what he meant was, like, you just calling me, just talking with me. And I'm going to see him this coming up weekend. Just there's something called a ministry of presence. Sometimes people just need you to be there beside them, and they don't need you to say anything. And that's what he was saying to me in that moment. There's another individual that I recently met with that he said that he was considering taking his own life at one point, had a really bad breakup, and and was thinking about rolling his truck, actually. And he said he got a call. And he answered, and they said, "Are you okay?" He said, "I'm fine." And it was obvious. He started crying. He said that the person said, "I can tell you don't sound fine." And just said, "Why don't you come over?" So he went over, and it just happened to be somebody who's really connected here at the Way. And she said, "Hey, why don't you just dive into what Jesus might have for you? I believe that Jesus has something for you. Come with me to church. Come with me to this college ministry with me." And so he did, and it's there that God showed him the hope and the healing that he wanted to offer him while he was hurting, and even meeting him in the struggle of the sins and things that he was struggling with. And on last Sunday night, whenever we had everyone raise the lights in the air to talk about the hope of Jesus in the midst of our own darkness, he said that, "Man, I, with a smile, raised my light in the air because I found hope that's real in Jesus." Man, it's real. The hope of Jesus, it's real. And it's here for you. But it was somebody just saying, "Hey, why don't you come to church with me?" There's a lot of ways that we help each other whenever we fall. There was a group of people, our leadership, as I said to them, I said, "Man, I was in this battle in my life, one of the toughest battles in my entire life." And I said, I did not know how I was going to continue on. And I'm talking to our leadership here at the Way. And I said, "Guys, I am broken." And I thought, man, I was like, man, they're not going to want to follow a pastor that struggles with this kind of stuff. And I've talked about this before. But what they did was they responded by writing me. Each of them wrote a letter to me of encouragement and about how God had used this place in their life, and just to say, "Hey, I'm here, and not only are you here for us, but we are here for you." And those letters, man, they were a net that caught me as I thought I was gonna fall every day. And I read multiple times. I read every single one of them multiple times. We need each other whenever we find ourselves in this moment of falling. All of us. One of the things that we got to do is we got to learn to open up, though. If you're struggling, if you're falling, you got to tell somebody. And the way that this passage says it is in verse 11. In verse 11, it says, "Again, if two lie together, they keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone?" Now, first of all, I just want to say that this is not a pickup line. So some of y'all are like, "Man, that's a good word there." You're thinking about the girl that you're sitting next to, or the girl down the row, or that was at dinner, and you're like, "She's really cute." And you're like, I could go up to her and just be like, "Hey, you hear that sermon tonight, girl? Pastor said snuggling's biblical." Just saying. Yeah, that's not what that's talking about. What that's saying is like, man, like, to have community around you, it provides a warmth in a very cold world. But here's the thing, you gotta be willing to say, "I'm cold." Like me and my wife, whenever we're sitting and watching TV, I'm actually the one that gets cold, and she's the one that is always burning up and hot. But I'm just like sitting there, I'm like, "Babe, can you get me a blanket?" And it's like, it's this vulnerable moment in some weird ways. I say it hopefully a little bit more manly than that. But there's this vulnerability that is communicating. And some of us, man, like we don't have connection because we're not willing to open up to connect. Like some of us, it's like here's as deep as the connection goes. Like some of us, we're just bad at it, man. And we're like, "Yeah, but I don't want to do all that, you know?" Someone's like, you're like, "Man, okay, I'm gonna really open up." And you're like, "Okay, I'm really gonna do it." You take the challenge, and you're like, "Okay." Someone comes up to you, you're like, "Bro, what's really going on?" You go, "Okay, you ready for it?" I'll be honest with you, man. I'm not sure the Cowboys are actually going to go to the Super Bowl. I'm just going to be honest. Hey, I'm a Cowboy fan through and through, and I just want to say, we them boys, and this is our year. Okay. You're like you just jinxed us completely. That stinks. Now I'm going to have to go home and watch that. You just told me that they lost, and I'm mad at you for that. But I forgive you because we have to have connection. Okay. And so all of us, like, we've got to be willing to open up. We've got to be willing to say, "Hey, man, I'm struggling with this thing here. Like I have this temptation that's threatening to take me out. I have this issue that man, I don't want to share about, or this thing going on in my family. I just want to just pretend it's not there. And man, we just cover up and cover up and cover up because we think that it's easier. In some ways, in the moment, it is, but ultimately, it leads to our demise. And God's saying, you've got to be vulnerable. You got to be willing to say, guys, I'm cold here. I need somebody to speak to me and speak over my life here. Here's what I wrote down. The fire of community is built by vulnerability. The fire of community is actually built by vulnerability. So is there somewhere that you need to open up? Give others a chance to encourage you as you encourage them. Because man, this life is a wrestle. This life is a fight. And that's what picture we get in verse 12. It's this picture of an actual fight. It says, and though a man might prevail against one who is alone, two will withstand him. There was a story I came across. There's a picture of two college wrestlers I want to show you. So the one with the stitched up face in the hospital bed, his name is Kendall Cummings, and the one standing over him in blue is Brady Lowry, and they were hunting. They were hunting for deer antlers, and so while they were there, they were in the forest, and they said that they noticed as they're walking back to their cars, they noticed that there were some grizzly tracks. And the moment that they noticed the grizzly tracks, they said that a grizzly bear darted out from the trees and actually tackled Brady over this ledge about 5 foot down and was on top of Brady, okay? And then Kendall literally didn't know what to do in the moment. Oh, you gotta think how fast it's going. He starts taking rocks that were around him and trying to throw it at the bear, and that wasn't working. So he literally just jumped, and he jumped on the bear's back. You could say he gave him a bear hug. Because it's a bear. And so jumped on his back to save his friend's life. And man, they made it alive. And that's what saved his friend's life. Now it cost him his face, but his friend was saved because of him really willing to take that risk. And I mean, they made it. They barely made it, you could say, but they made it. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Man, that's the kind of friend, like we hear stories like that, and we're like, bro, like that's the kind of friend that I want. That's the kind of friend that I want to be like, man, and there's people that are in my corner and I'm in their corner, like, man, Tyler and I, like, he's my boy and I'm his boy, like, and I would say, I hope I would be there if a grizzly bear was to ever attack you. How about let's just not go into the forest and go antler hunting? Let's solve the issue. But man, we want people that are in our corner in this fight of faith. Because faith is a fight. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 11 and 12 says it like this. But as for you, O man of God, flee these things, pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, steadfastness, gentleness. Fight the good fight of the faith. What is the fight of the faith? It's the fight to, man, pursue Jesus in the midst of all the things of the world that are offering for us to chase after that. It's the fight to press on in the midst of our doubt. It's the fight for our own purity. It's the fight to be the light of the world, pushing back the darkness that's in the world, which is the church is supposed to be. It's the fight of, man, clinging to hope whenever I'm hurting. There's a real hope in Jesus, like we already talked about. There's a fight to all of these things. Who is in your corner in the midst of all these things? And maybe you're here and you've been fighting the fight, man. And I want to tell you, keep going. It's worth it. It's worth it. The pursuit of Jesus is worth it. Keep going. And if you're answering the question, you're going, who is in my corner? I want to tell you, man, truly, we are. We are. We're in your corner as we're in this fight together. And as we close, I want you to hear this. Jesus is our ultimate friend that changes our eternal future. John 15, verse 13 through 15 says, greater love has no one than this, that someone would lay down his life for his friends. You are my friends. And then it gives this massive caveat here, this massive if you do what I command you. What he's trying to say is, listen, you get Jesus' friendship as you surrender over to his lordship in your life. You got to get Jesus' friendship, you've got to first surrender to his kingship in your life. Then in verse 15, he says, no longer do I call you servants, for the servant does not know what his master's doing, but I call you friends. Amen. Jesus connecting how he's the friend in all of these things. Jesus created us for connection ultimately with himself, and without Jesus, your soul will be empty. And he wants to connect with you if you're not connected with him tonight. Jesus makes us stronger and takes us further than we ever thought we could go, because Jesus gives a newfound purpose to our life. Jesus will catch us when we fall. He's the one who says, I will never leave you nor forsake you. He will literally always be there. And ultimately, Jesus is the friend that actually laid down his life. Literally laying down his life to go to a cross. He is the king that went to a cross for you and me to save us, so we could be rescued, so we could be fully loved and fully known as we repent and turn to him, trusting him with our life, putting our faith in him. We need Jesus' friendship, and we need Jesus' people in our life. Let's pray. God, help us be a people who are filled with your light in this room. Flood any dark places with your light even right now. And help us be people that are not only filled with your light, but also your love that would flow through us to others as we connect and we walk this journey together. Thank you for creating the church and calling us to it. Let's stand and worship together.